I don't think that founders at the beginning should have work-life balance. I would say that's BS. It requires obsession and mania. My wife would find me in a dark room with a laptop shining light on my face at 2 a.m. I don't know, commenting about some kind of a button on the screen that wasn't green enough. What is thought leadership is like, oh, you actually need to be somebody that has something to say about life and the world. It's like, I'm like that. Like all my friends call me a bullshitter, so I gotta be somebody like that. People that I've hired over the years, they would tell me, Pini, you don't tell us what to do, you tell us how to do it. And we hate that because why did you hire me if you're telling me how to do it? So just say, guys, I feel really frustrated about what happened in the past 2 months. Excuse me, but I'm gonna be a little prickly at points. And then everybody say, yeah, you know, we're sorry that you feel this way, like, but here's what happened on our side. And then we just had an amazing offsite. So it was like the best offsite we've ever had.
Welcome to the iGaming Leader Podcast, where we uncover the human side of some of the most inspirational leaders in our industry. I'm your host, Leo Judkins, and as an ex-iGaming director turned performance coach, I've worked with over 200 leaders from companies like Entain, 365, Flutter, and many more to help them build the habits to achieve sustainable high performance. In these episodes, we share exactly what it takes for you to achieve the same. So with that being said, let's dive in. Hey, Pini, great to have you here. Welcome on the iGaming Leader. I've been super excited to talk to you.
Thank you, Leo. Excited to be here.
I wanted to kind of kick off with the whole Optimove start and what happened in your life that you thought the world needs Optimove. Like, this is what we've got to do.
To me, basically, you know, just I think even as a child, I've always wanted to have, like, my dream was having my own business. I can remember this movie, the American movie called The Secret of My Success with Michael J. Fox, if you ever watched it. It's basically like a young kid, 20 years old after college, going to his uncle's firm in New York City. And he's got a little book that tells him how to take over the firm in 90 days or something. You know, I've always liked this idea of having my own business, kind of like being an entrepreneur. That always felt like the proper way to be a hero to me. So, and I had to wait, you know, I spent a lot of time at uni, spent a lot of time kind of like doing a master's degree and having a thesis, kind of like being a little bit of part of the academic world. And over there, kind of like I met a PhD in my department and he was talking about data mining and some things I thought would be cool. And my intuition told me that that would be like something of the future. I was right about that. And, you know, we set off to start the business, which we didn't exactly know what it was, but he had some data mining capabilities. I had a lot of operations research capabilities and kind of like a lot of good common sense and being a little bit of a jack of all trades, kind of like a little bit of a renaissance man of tech, you would say. And we just started on a journey. And I remember us walking, kind of like getting coffee. And I was like, is segmentation a product? How do people do? And we started meeting banks and insurance companies and telco companies. And that was the time that telcos were all the rage. I remember like telcos would sell you everything, the content, it was very expensive. You just started doing that and you know, starting with it with kind of like a data mining agency that we later transformed into a proper product, which is Optimove.
Hey, and why gaming?
So working with those banks and those retailers in Israel, we saw that we brought like a very high level of sophistication to data and predictive modeling, and they would still ask us what's their average order basket value. You know, what's their average order value, right? So, shit, man, I just spoke to you about lifetime value prediction or who's going to be a VIP, and you're asking me that. Can't you get it like yourself from your basic? And they couldn't. I remember kind of like walking my dog and one of my neighbors, he worked for Google. And he was like, Pini, have you tried internet companies? It's like, what's internet companies? You know, companies that were born on the internet. And I was like, it's like gaming and you got all of these affiliates. And we had a bunch of people in Israel from the Download Valley. So like Babylon and Conduit and names that you probably wouldn't know because all of these companies don't exist anymore. And then we met with 888 and Playtech. And of course, they took us through 5,000 meetings that didn't do anything, but we saw that they're truly excited about what we're doing. Then basically it spawned everything. And I think the first one was the Play 65, which was backgammon. And another one was Neo Games, which became very, very big. So those all kind of like the beginning, the few first customers.
Hey, you know what I found really cool? When I first moved into CRM, I actually didn't really know anything about it, and I didn't really get it. And I just, you guys were so amazing with all of the content that you provided, right? Gated content, which is obviously going to be a funnel for you, but for me as a consumer of that, it's really helped me develop and shape my understanding of what CRM really is, how to utilize it to the best possible approach, and how you can use it in the gaming industry. Now, I didn't see anybody taking that approach. Right, I saw it with some e-commerce businesses, I suppose, but nobody in gaming did that. What kind of made you take that approach, and what did it do for your business?
I think mostly kind of like it depends on how you know build your journey. And for us, for me at least, because I was a very young entrepreneur, kind of like didn't work anywhere, right? So basically out of uni went to start Optimove with this PhD guy. And so for me, everything was discovery and everything was about the joy of creation. So if I just had a problem that I saw with one of my clients and I came up with a solution, I was so excited about it that I wanted to write about it. And I started to see kind of like I always aspired, you know, Israel is also a very strong tech hub. So some of the best tech companies on the planet spawn out of Israel and Tel Aviv specifically. So being in this ecosystem, kind of like meeting VCs, meeting some, I was never a part of it. I never took kind of like venture money, at least not at the beginning. So I was always kind of like a little bit of a renegade, but I still looked at what they were doing. It's like, oh, blogging is a thing, right? So what is it? Well, what does it actually mean? Oh, you write your thoughts there. I was like, wait a second. So I can play a little bit of a journalist, right? So I can be maybe a little bit of a journalist, a little bit of a content person, which I'm not, like a media person, but I have an interesting point of view about that. Or one of our analysts just did a really cool analysis about, you know, something else. So can we just put it out there? And we started to basically kind of like celebrate the things that we discovered. So I would say it's like discovery and joy of creation. And you're starting to see American companies, the best startups, you know, HubSpot talking about it at the time a lot. So blogging, SEO, content marketing. So I would start set up a marketing department. So what are we supposed to do here? Oh, you know, we're supposed to build a brand and generate leads. How do you do it? So people say, oh, it's thought leadership. So what is thought leadership? Is like, oh, you actually need to be somebody that has something to say about life and the world. It's like, I'm like that. Like all my friends call me a bullshitter. So I got to be somebody like that. So that's basically how it started. You know, it's very, and then you iterate and improve it. And, you know, at some point in time, we even issued a publication called Post Funnel. We actually had like a news publication in the space. It didn't work. It was too much of a vanity project. It didn't work. But we had it up for like 3 years. We had external reporters writing there.
But I loved it, man. I like it was so high quality and so much value for just for an exchange of an email address, right? And it was amazing. I really loved it. So I just wanted to say thank you for that, because that helped shape me as a person and got us to do business in the end. I wanted to talk about that. I think we started working together in 2014 when I was at Victor. And I just remembered being on the call with you quite regularly, and you're such a hands-on guy, right? And I wanted to ask you about that. Like, as a CEO of a fast-growing company, that can also make you the bottleneck, right? If you're that involved, like your passion and so tell me a little bit more about how you balance those two things, that the excitement of being involved, but also not being the bottleneck for your team.
Wow. Yeah. You're touching on the topic, I think, in management, and especially when you talk about being a manager and a founder, which is a completely different thing.
Yep.
So to me, my strength as a leader comes from knowing the details and knowing the craft. That's how I've built Optimove, right? I got to know the craft. I didn't raise money, so I had to study HR. I had to study finance, understand engineering, because I'm an engineer, but I'm not a software engineer. So writing code. I had to study all of these things and just being curious and asking more and more questions and understanding, being a student of the game, right? So the game of tech, the game of being a tech founder. How does it work? What do you do? So they always created a very problematic situation, to your point, that people that I've hired over the years in many situations, they would tell me, Pini, you don't tell us what to do. You tell us how to do it. And we hate that, because why did you hire me if you're telling me how to do it? The guy from Y Combinator, I think Paul Graham, he just published something called Founder Mode, an article called Founder Mode. So you saw that?
Mhm.
So that was based on a talk that was given by the founder of Airbnb. And basically what they said is all of us founders, we at some point in time, we hire like senior people that help us build the business. We have investors, and people always tell us what we need to do. Like hire good people, let them do their thing, right? Give them the goals, give them the procedures, give them how they should take decisions, but stand aside and let them do their thing. And empower people. Don't micromanage. Don't go into the details. Don't tell them how. It's not your job, right? And I was also being told all of those things by my employees. I've always had employees and executives that reported to me. They would tell me how I need to do my job, right?
Yeah.
Don't tell me do this and this. Tell me that that's the goal I need to hit, and tell me I need to get it, and this is the budget I'm getting, right? So you're always being kind of like directed. And that article says that the playbook for what it means to be a good executive was built by hired executives.
Yep.
Now, hired executives, they don't have the privilege of a founder executive. A founder executive was there from day one. So the level of knowledge and depth and ability to analyze problems, to take decisions, to understand what needs to be done is by far vaster than a hired executive. And that's not because the founder is necessarily more talented. In some cases, founders are typically talented people, but not always. That's not always the case. Just because you have more repetition.
Yep.
If I would be hired tomorrow morning to run your business, take me a long time until I understand what's going on, until I develop the right intuitions, until if you hire me tomorrow morning to be a gaming executive, as good as the best ones out there. Maybe I'm a talented guy, but I'm just not. So it took me that's been a kind of like a tension I've been playing with for a long, long, long time. And as I matured, and I would kind of like, sometimes I would hire executives and let them do their thing. And over time, you learn how to trust your intuition. You learn how to be yourself, but at the same time, be more seasoned and mature. So to me, I just learned how to deal with it. Like ultimately what I do is I try to direct creativity and I try to give my flair from the beginning and then leave them a lot of room to take decisions. And I think that's working much, much, much better.
Yeah, and as a founder, I one of the things that I actually saw you recently post about as well is it's your baby, right? Your business is your baby.
Right.
And so I saw you posting that story about criticism and how that, how that meeting spiraled. So talk us through that. Talk us through that post and or that day and how that went and what you learned from it.
This post was about executive offsites, right? So what I tried to say on that post is kind of like more of the emotional level of what's happening in those sessions, right? So you have an executive from a global company. So you've got people flying in from New York, flying in from London, flying in from Tel Aviv, and they gather together in this room, maybe in Athens or in Rome. They're not meeting on a regular basis because they're from all over the world, right? They're meeting on Zoom. And typically what happens is discussion, it's really hard to have a very productive discussion for a long time. It's really, really hard because sometimes, you bicker and argue about minute things that don't really matter, but they matter to those two people who argue about them at the very moment.
Yep.
Sometimes you vent out with a lot of frustrations that you boiled up over the year because, you thought that executive that's responsible for that department was supposed to do X, Y, and Z, and they only did X, Y. And so discussions tend to be non-productive. People tend to be, sometimes they criticize, but they criticize in a little bit of an acidic way or a toxic way. But you want to say the truth, right? You want to be transparent. In order for us to build, you and I talked about how you grow and how you build yourself up. In order to build, the first step is be transparent and be clear about where you are. So you want executives to share, if we suck at X, I wanted to tell me that we suck at X, and they say it. But sometimes they voice it in an offensive manner that maybe somebody on the other side of the table gets hurt. So all of that has happened over the years. And what I did this year, I just basically asked them to prime their emotion before they start talking. You don't need to play games. You don't need to bullshit about, so Pini would think this, or Mosh would think that, or Eddie would think that. You don't need to do that. So just say, guys, I feel really frustrated about what happened in the past 2 months. So excuse me, but I'm gonna be a little prickly at points, and then go, and then everybody say, yeah, we're sorry that you feel this way, like, but here's what happened on our side, and then we just had an amazing offsite. So it was like the best offsite we've ever had, just because on the first day, and the first time I did it, it's our 10th offsite, and every offsite we had one discussion that blew up. And then you go into this rabbit hole and like this like 45 minutes of a discussion that goes nowhere and just completely wastes everybody's time. And now we did it in a way that I feel like was really good.
What might happen, Pini, is because you're passionate about what you've built, right? That sometimes that's going to feel it's almost going to feel like an attack, right? On the things that are being criticized on you, right? So how do you deal with that?
So again, when I was a younger CEO, I would exactly feel that way. So like
Yeah.
one executive would try to call out the things that are wrong.
Yeah.
But it was like, I was thinking to myself, like that other executive over there that's just listening to this one talking, he's thinking we're the worst company on the planet. It's not that bad. Like you just trashed the company and the Optimum brand to a degree that's like you're exaggerating, right? So I would try to say something like, so how would you rank us overall in that field? And then I was like, oh, probably an 8. Well, this doesn't sound like an 8. It sounded like a 4. So, I mean, you try to just, I think again, you just try to unpack it, say it like it is. But in early days, I would just fight it. I would litigate, right? I would come back at you with another. No, it's not. Like, it's not true. Like Leo actually told me that he loves that feature. Leo from Bet Victor. Who's Leo from Bet Victor? Yeah. One of our power users in Bet Victor, he told me he loved that, migration analysis.
Yeah.
So I would argue and argue and argue and try to protect the brand, but it wasn't the right approach.
Yeah, difficult, right? Difficult. And it's a sign of passion as well, which, you obviously don't want to lose. And I wanted to talk, you mentioned Moshe there. You've had people working there for a long time, right? I see Moti
Right.
still there, Amy. Like,
Yeah.
how do you create that kind of loyalty? Like what's the secret behind that? Because the industry is very fast moving. People typically stay somewhere 3 years or something. You've had some people that have been there for a very long time. And how do you do that? What's the secret?
Yeah, because we are fortunate enough to grow the company. We're a 500 people company today. So you can offer those people new positions, new challenges, like somebody like Moshe or like Moti, right? So there's a new challenge. So Moti is now a VP, right? So, and he's running a very large revenue organization. And at the beginning, he only managed Amy, right? So, so you can offer those people opportunities to grow, to showcase their talents. And as they're growing as people and growing in age and growing in experience, their positions grow. And the culture of the company is the second thing. If you have like a good culture, they feel, I think in many ways, they feel like it's theirs, right? So they are, in many ways co-founders, right? Because they have built this company.
Yeah, that's something I've always noticed talking to those guys as well. They're very, huge amount of ownership, decision-making power, feel very empowered. It's like talking to you, really, right? And I think that's such an important thing as a partner as well. But there's also a flip side to that, I guess, right? You create a lot of loyalty, you pour a lot of your time, energy, soul, and love into people, and then people leave, right? There's also people that probably been there for a long time and that left, and that, I bet that hurts. So how do how do you deal with that?
It does. It hurts a lot. Like as a founder, I remember when I was a younger founder, I used to call it like the bi-weekly punch in the gut that you get. Like every week you get like two punches to the gut from something, and one of those was always like a key team member leaving. Sometimes it feels like, you take it personal. I've invested so much in that person. I thought we were friends. There's all of these things because obviously you spend so much time together. With time, you learn how to deal with those things, and you get kind of like a bit, your skin gets thicker, and you understand that it's not the end of the world. And sometimes it's a change for the better. There's a few people that left, and they also have like they're very, very high up today in other places. Very, very strong in the industry. And typically, a lot of them are in social games, very high up in Playtika, or very high up in Zynga. So those are all people that somebody came from Optimum. They left very earlier in their career, probably having very high aspirations and not necessarily the patience to wait and go with Optimum, or even saying, I need more room, right? Maybe they're closer to my age. A lot of the people that stayed with me, there's a little bit of gap between us, right? So I'm more of like a big brother to them. those things matter as well. And then you have the people that just didn't have the patience, didn't have they always have like a bone to pick or something that bothers them a bit more than the ones that you have mentioned that were able to stay. I do feel that I was able to keep kind of like the key talent in Optimove. I do feel like that. I have like also a sense of it, and then you follow that sense and you build that relationship even stronger.
Yeah, makes a lot of sense.
Did you have similar experiences, kind of like with folks that work for you?
Yeah, it's like you said. The big thing is always that it almost feels like betrayal when you've put a lot of time and effort and energy and love and passion into developing someone, and like you said, because you spend so much time with them, right? It's like there's almost a process of mourning that sometimes you need to
Right.
go through, right? Yeah, I think that's hard, but just realizing that that happens and that is just you know the way life works is,
Right.
I think, it's really important. It's understanding that you have those emotions, recognizing them, and then effectively dealing with it. I think that that's really the key. Emotional regulation, I think, is such an important skill to develop as a leader. That's
You feel like it comes with age?
Yeah, I think so. And I think also it comes with just your habits, right? It's just repetitions. You love basketball. It's like that, right? It's like taking a shot a million times, and you don't have to think about it anymore. It's just part of the process,
To me, I find it's harder when you're younger, when you get older.
for
It
sure.
still hurts, but you just say, wait, I've seen this like 7 times before, and that's what happened. So
Yeah. I think another thing, maybe Pinny as well, is that when you're younger and as you get older, it's there's also almost a fear, I think, right, of this having to keep an eye on your business and how it's going, and it almost prevents you from switching off. And I think as we get older, it also just your work life balance gets a little bit better because you start prioritizing it. We spoke a little bit before we started recording about your well being and how that matters and how that really changes things for you. And I think that's also something that you learn with age, that how important and what the benefits are actually of protecting your well-being and protecting your work-life balance. So can you tell me a little bit more about that, what that means for you and how that's changed over time for you?
I think a key word that comes up to me is obsession. I think entrepreneurship is a lot about obsession because you have to have a very high dosage of obsession to lift something off the ground. That's for sure, and a very high level of concentrated effort. And the concentrated effort will come from obsession. So I don't think that like founders at the beginning, I don't think they should have work-life balance. Like I would say that's BS. Now, with time, when you've been doing something, for me, Optimove is almost 13 years, and before Optimove, there's another 3, so it's 16 years. Times go by, you get older, and you start to play the game a bit differently, and also your team asks you. Going back to the beginning of our conversation, like when I tell them how to do things, and I'm so now that I'm a little bit more removed from the fine details. So yes, I think kind of like as you get older, as the company gets older, I've always liked the fact that kind of like the company's growth and size and stage mirrors my own personal growth in size and stage. Because again, everything fits, right? The company is super young, I'm young. The company doesn't know anything, I don't know anything, right? It's like it all fits, right? And gradually it grows together. But yeah, I do think that yes, you can learn how to invest in yourself during that process, take care of yourself a bit better. We talked a lot about kind of like sports and a healthy lifestyle, which I've adopted in the past 14 months. And yeah, I think it does help, right? It's you can be a better example. You can focus on the more important things. But bottom line, I do think it requires obsession and a little bit of a mania. My wife would find me, in a dark room with a laptop, kind of like shining light on my face at like 2 a.m. I don't know, commenting about some kind of a button on the screen that wasn't green enough, right? I have a friend an entrepreneur, and I got a few friends, and I always see like when they, how are you with me in this party right now? And you're generally thinking about the party. and not about your business. I never had that.
I'm really surprised when people have that. It's the same. That's 100% the same for me. It's the first thing you wake up with, and it's the last thing you go to bed with. Quick break here. If you're a head of, director, VP, or executive in iGaming who's successful at work, but is finding it hard to achieve balance in life and switch off from work, then I've got something that's going to help. On the 3rd of February, we are launching the iGaming Leader Reset, a 6-week coaching program in which I will personally work with 15 iGaming leaders to build habits for sustainable high performance, all in just 20 minutes a day. It's limited to only 15 leaders, so if that's something that you want to know a little bit more about, head over to igamingleader.com, and I hope to see you there. Now let's get back to our conversation. So for you as a dad then, Pini, how do you, it's changed over time, the business has matured, you've matured as a leader as well. But as a dad, right, how do you stay present with your family and, like mentally present, without your thoughts racing and you actually spending time there?
So number one for me, it's I'm basically a project. I'm probably the most successful project that my dad did. So I was very much kind of like a child glued to the knee of his father. My father would spend hours and hours and hours with me, conversation and just walking on the streets and talking about life and about this and about that. And I was like he had me when he was older. He was 40 at the time. Today it's very common to have a child when you're 40, but when my father was born in 1937, so it wasn't that common to have a child when you're 40. So it's very natural to me, like my personal identity revolves also around me being a father. So it's very easy for me to muster up some energy to be a father. At the same time, to your point before, I remember I was kind of like when we moved to New York and that was 2016 to set up kind of like our New York and American presence, which is doing really well till today. I remember my son was a year and a half and I remember being with him in the playground and he's like the cutest thing. He just said something so cute and funny and his eyes, big blue eyes, and his face is so beautiful. And I remember thinking, he is so amazing. And even all of that amazingness that he has cannot supersede all the thoughts that are going in my head and all the things that I'm bothered about. And I cannot see it right now. I remember thinking about it. I cannot see how amazing he is. And of course I would say, oh, that's great. I would physically, thinking to myself that it's like a battle of titans, right? So all of the thoughts in my head and the things that I find worrying, and he comes up with all of this cuteness and beautifulness and being this adorable thing that's unresistible versus the nasty thoughts in my head that's also unresistible. And it's like clashing. So it happened a lot. But at the same time, I've always felt that I took the time to have some quality time with the kids. I'm a passionate dad. I've got 3 boys. So I'm very passionate about it. And today I can be more present. Again, being a little bit older, knowing how to shift your thoughts when needed, knowing how to manage that. But yeah, it does happen as well.
No, I think it's very normal. And it's just realizing that's happening and focusing on and getting the most out of the moments that you have, right? You're working long hours, make most out of the time that you do have I think is such a key message. Hey, and Pini, you're talking about this story about giving your kids some money and you kind of translated that to leadership and letting go as a leader. We talked a little bit about delegating the why and not so much the how, right? So tell me how how has that fatherhood kind of translated to letting go as a leader?
Actually, in this case, I think what I did was I took my Optimove CEO hat and brought it into the household. So it was actually happened the other way around. So we had the summer vacation in Iceland. And so we went to Iceland, to the Burgundy County in France, and then to an island in Greece. So we did 3 weeks. It was a great vacation. But the element of us stopping in Iceland in the middle of this, God knows where, next to a geyser, and then it's a gift shop. So they want to buy the doll of this and they want to buy the sticker of that. And every time it's kind of no, you just bought one yesterday. But then it's 4 €4. So it's like, oh, who cares? But then like they'll ask again. It's an endless, tiring discussion. We're both tired and angry about it. And I remember I'm not doing this in the next trip. I'm coming up with something. And we went to New York like in October. And and we used to live in New York, so it's more of like for me, I actually went to work there, so it's half and half. And I said it's like we're more of a vocation. But I told the kids, I have two, the older ones, 10 and 7, I was like, look, guys, you can have for the entire trip, it's 11 days. I'm going to give you money for all of your gifts. You have to manage that money, right? So you both get $100. My older son immediately said 150. I was like, he's my son. So I was like, we'll settle at 125, which we did. So each of them got $125 for 11 days, which is not a lot, right? It's like $10 a day. So it's for 11 days. And then I told them, and you manage it. You can buy whatever you want. Whatever you want. You can buy one thing for $125. You can buy many small things. You can if you don't spend it, we come home, I'll pay you back. I'll give you this money as allowance. So your call. And just, kick back and watch a miracle happen. They would basically, consult with one another in a store. Like, oh, should I be buying this? How much? It's like, Dad, how much is it? That was like $12. Like, oh, no, I'm not. Look, why? It's like pretty good. Like, it's not. So no, I'm not spending $12. So it was so funny. It was so funny how they started to, so you see, just empower them. And all of a sudden, zero whining, zero fights, zero aggravation between us. Everything is like, Dad, so why are you asking me? I told you, you don't need to ask me. You can buy whatever you want. So I was like, oh, okay. And then it was just beautiful. And I think for me, I just took it from, it's like you do budgets in the company, you use budgets to basically have other people take decisions, but you want to cap those decisions so they're not completely abnormal. And so it's the same thing. So it's like a budgeting mechanism that worked.
Yeah, love it.
Super easy.
Great approach. CEO dad. I like it.
Fair. It's you. I think everybody should do it. Like, because actually the funny thing, when something is correct, the value grows from all sides. So they loved it. They loved it. They bought something great. They had a sense of independence. They loved it. They loved it much more than me.
Yeah.
So
Amazing.
that's great.
Amazing. Hey, Pini, thank you very much. Last question from my side. For any of the listeners, anybody tuning into this interview, what's your one piece of advice for being a better leader? What's the one lesson, the biggest lesson that perhaps you've learned over your career, or like an actionable step that somebody could take in their journey to becoming a more high performance leader?
Wow. That's a
big question, I know.
It's a big question. I think number one, it's funny. Like I would have a lot of debates with myself about this topic, especially kind of like being younger. I remember getting a dog right where I started Optimove, and he was like a very kind of like alpha-ish, or an aspiring alpha. Let's call it like that. And the way I would even learn from him how he would approach situations, which is very graphic, right? He's a dog, but less sophisticated. It's a simpler operating system. But I used to live that thing, and I remember like trying to train him, and then like he wouldn't follow me, and I would say, "Oh my God, if he's not following me, how can I lead a company?" You have those thoughts with yourself. And you're trying to say, can I be a leader of a dog before I'm a leader of people? And I think, look, first off, everybody's got a different vessel. Your style of leadership versus my style of leadership is going to be different. So number one, you got to make it your own. It's not going to be the same. One leader would get a lot from being the smartest guy in the room. Another leader would get a lot by having a very high EQ, right? So he sees his people. Another leader is great at the craft, right? It's artsy and like great at the art. So the way you do it is like you work with your people and you get the joy out of working together and troubleshooting things together. It's very, very different, I think. Obviously, one of the great pillars is lead by example. If you're telling your people that they need to stay up late and you go to have beer 5 p.m., like that's not great. But those are the classics, right? You don't need me. Everybody, you can get it in any 101 leadership book or something. And I still have my things that I need to work on for sure. It's about getting comfortable with yourself and accepting what you're going to be good at and bad at, and just always ask those questions. So, how can you be a better leader from what you are today? How can you be a better leader? Like be a student of that game. That's a big one for me, because if you have that curiosity, how can I be a better leader? And you have that openness, because I cannot say one formula, right? Because the formula would change per person. Things that work for me are not necessarily good for you, Leo. So because we are different people, we're wired differently. So if somebody wants to be a better leader, first thing you should do is study that. How do people become better leaders? What do they do? What leadership? There's the famous Jim Collins book, From Good to Great, and he talks about, he's got like level 4 leaders and level 5 leaders. And level 5 leaders are those, greater than life type of people that they would be super unselfish. And in many cases, they basically sacrifice themselves, Braveheart thing to say, or, I don't know if it's real life exactly like that, but people that, you're looking like, oh my God, like this guy, or what this guy is doing for me, it's just going to follow him to the moon. Like no matter what happens, he's just so, when you sacrifice yourself for the group, I think that's the ultimate level. But below that, there's obviously your charisma, your ability to articulate a vision, and your ability to communicate this and that, your ability to see your people, to trust them, to appreciate them. Appreciation goes a long way. A lot of things, but I would say just try to study that thing. What does it mean for you to be a better leader?
Yeah, love it. Make yourself a self-optimizing campaign. I like it.
A self-optimizing leader.
Yeah, I like it. Hey, Pini, thanks a lot for sharing your thoughts and being on the podcast. Really love talking to you. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Leo. I've enjoyed it.
Thank you for joining me on the iGaming Leader podcast. If you enjoyed today's episode, head over to igamingleader.com for more conversations and insights. Don't forget to subscribe to this podcast. I'm your host, Leo Judkins, and I hope to see you next week.